All right, let's get started today. So what we'll first take a look at is turning on our approve reject workflow for any given template. So last time we had our webinar series, we walked through filling out our forms on both the mobile device and on the web application. And during those examples, the end user was simply marking their forms as complete. So right now I'm on my forms page here. And just to show an example here, I'll open one of these up. And actually, let me find one of my own here. So I'm going to go to owners. I'm just going to select my name. If you ever need to find any of your own forms, just find yourself under owner. And without the approve reject workflow on, you're essentially your own approver in a sense. When you are done with any given form on the top right-hand side, you're going to mark it as complete. And that's going to signify to all the others in the system and to yourself. So it said form completed. On this form page, it's going to reside in this column here. In certain instances, though, we're going to want to go ahead and have other people sign off on this work. And that is going to require us to go to a template and find that and turn on the workflow. This is then going to place any of our forms in either the pending, rejected, or approved column as we go through the paces to get this to the final column here. Reasons that you might want to turn on the approve reject workflow before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty on how to do it. It can be really helpful for employees in different geographic locations, so geographically dispersed workforce. So office to office, different job site to office. What this will allow you to do is digitally send a copy of this form over for a sign-off. So if it's going to be difficult for someone to get back to the office or go to the job site, this can be a great feature to turn on. Another time this could be important, which we'll take a look at, is for tracking form history. So as our form goes from pending all the way to approved, we're going to keep track of who's approved it, date, time stamps, things along those lines for accountability. So if this is important to track when people are signing off on the forms, this could be another great reason to turn this on. And just as a refresher too, so this workflow, we're not sending these forms for other people to continue to fill out or anything like that. This is simply to get a signature, a sign off on this form. Kind of the opposite of what I just talked about here. If you have a form that is going to be filled out by people in the same office, on the same job site, don't feel like you have to turn on this workflow. Don't try to force it if it's not going to work. Sometimes it is just easier to add 2 signature components to any template and just have someone walk on up with their iPad, with their phone, and say, I've finished with this inspection. Will you come over, give your signature at the end here to sign off before I mark it as complete. You will most likely end up with a mixture of both non-workflow and workflow forms within your B2W informed tenant here. I'm going to navigate over to templates, and I'm going to show you where to go ahead and enable workflow. So I'm going to open up this incident investigation form. And within here, I'm going to navigate back over to properties. So this is something that we set up when you first start building out your template, but you can always come back and make changes here. And I'm going to navigate to the second page, template workflow and security. At the bottom of this page, we see approve reject workflow. So previously, when we built out ours in our previous webinar, I kept this on no. With it on no, that's when the user is simply going to mark a form as complete. To turn the workflow on, we're going to come in here, flip this over to yes. Beneath this, we have a couple different options on how we're going to determine who is able to approve this form. People who we're going to see below here as a little background, they're going to be users who within the setup area, so under their account settings, they're going to need to be part of a user group that has that form approver permission. So if we don't see them in here, that's most likely why. Two different choices. I'm actually going to start with the second one because it's the simpler of the two. And that is us as a template designer here saying we're going to define the approval sequence. I'll just hover over this help text here as I talk through this. This is us saying that no matter who fills this form out, this is always going to this person or person, because we can have more than one approver on any form, and it's always going to go in this order. So taking this out of the control of the end user filling this form out. The top option here is allowing the form filler to choose from the following approvers. So this puts it in the hands of the end user, and the two main options here is one, putting all eligible user groups and all eligible users as options from the drop-down list when they go to send this off for approval. And maybe we don't want to define explicitly with this second option, but we don't want just all the names there. We can kind of get to a middle ground here, and we can specify the user groups that are able to be selected here. So maybe this is an equipment type form. So I just want the equipment managers that have that approval permission to be in here. And then maybe I know someone else also likes to approve these. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to grab Eliza here because she also sometimes will be able to do that. So this is that middle ground area where we're not going to allow everybody, but we're not going to explicitly define it, but we're going to pick and choose who is able to sign off on these here. For this example, I'm just going to leave this open. So I'm going to go to all eligible groups and all eligible individuals here. I'm then going to select save, and I'm going to publish my template to push that change out. So again, we're going to want to hit publish anytime we make a change to a template that we're going to go ahead and wish to see on that form in the system. So the template was published successfully. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to navigate over to my forms, and I'm going to fill this form out. And actually, we can just do a quick search in the top here. And there it is, my incident investigation form. And we see our form properties, our standard form properties here. We're going to notice a new tab within our form properties, approval sequence here. Within here, I can now specify anyone that I need to for approval of this form. Let's say that our user didn't pay attention to this, they just filled out their subgroup, hit save, and they continued to fill out their form as they normally would. And we're just going to grab a couple of required questions here. And I'll sign off on it here with my signature here. And we'll go ahead and submit this. So hit save. At this point, I'm going to hit submit. And our user skipped this during that first process. So this is going to catch that. And it's going to say, hold on 1 second. This form requires approval, and you've yet to tell me who to send this to. I am going to take a pause at this point. When we were within that template editor, and I said there's 2 ways to set this up, if I had used that second option, which is called the defined approval sequence, we would see this already pre-filled with our approvers, and the user would have to take no action at this point. So that is a little easier for the users at that point. Don't even have to pick anyone. They can just hit submit, and it will go behind the scenes here. But just to demonstrate the full purposes, we're going to go ahead and take a look at defining one for them. So at this point, we'll hit the drop-down list. The list of individuals we're seeing here is based off that template. So based off whoever we selected as an eligible form approver here. At this point, I can select an individual. I can then hit submit form, and this would go along the way. Some other options on this page, most useful here for your users here. So they can go ahead and select this checkbox. And now if I were to do this and I hit submit form, next time I were to fill this out, I could hit submit and I won't have to even see this screen here. It'll remember who I sent it to last time. This is especially useful for if there are multiple approvers for a given form. So you're not limited to just one approver for any form. You can have as many as you like here. And these can be added at different junctures of the approval process. So at the beginning, let's say the user knows that it's going to go in a certain order. They could come in here and say, first it's going to Bob, and then I know after Bob, then it's going over to Eliza here. So rather than having to fill this out each time, they could come in here, select that checkbox, it'll remember this sequence. So really the only time that someone has to select who's going to approve this is the first time they fill out a form, or if this ever changes as time goes on. I'm going to leave just one approver here, and I'm going to hit submit form. And we'll switch accounts in just a moment here to take a look at how this progresses down the path. But before we do that, I want to take a look at two new buttons that are available that are not there when we simply mark a form as completed. The first is this history button. This is going to start logging at this point this entire approval process. So we see the date timestamp, who I'm logged in as, so the form owner here, and who it's submitted to. As time goes on, this will continue to track if this form ever gets pulled back in for editing, if it gets rejected, when it gets approved. So we'll have a nice timestamp of all this happening. This will additionally, I'm going to hit this preview button here. Show up in the appendix of our form here. So we mentioned when we were filling out forms that an appendix gets added when we attach photos, when we attach files. Additionally, we're going to see form history in this appendix as well. So if you were to print this form or take it out of Inform, you wouldn't lose that area of information there. The last thing I want to take a look at is this recall button. So I've submitted this form at this point to Bob for approval. Let's say I submitted that, but I noticed that I mentioned this was equipment damage, and I didn't pick the piece of equipment. Rather for him to quickly realize that I didn't fill this out correctly, I can hit recall and pull this back into my queue. So this saves the time and process of sending a text message, calling the individual, waiting for them to log in and see this. You can just pull this right back into your queue and make the changes you need to make here. Come here. And make my changes, fill this out, hit submit again, and this will send this back over for approval here. A quick check of the history reveals this did log all that activity. So 10:13, I submitted this, 10:15, I recalled this form, and 10:15, I resubmitted to Bob for approval. So now let's take a look at what's going to happen for an approval process. So I'm going to switch screens over to, I'm already logged in as Bob Carver here, and we'll go to our pending tab here, and we'll see this form is in here. So before we jump into the approve reject process, I want to take note. First time, we're going to talk about notifications. So as soon as I, as a form filler, submit this form for approval, a couple of notifications are going to occur in the system. So the first of which is going to be an email is sent out to that user. That email is going to have the name of the form, who submitted it, and a link to that form for the user who receives it to click on it and pull them straight into that form. Additionally, within B2W Inform, in the top right corner, we're going to see some notifications come through. So I can see that the 2 times I submitted this form here. So if I were to click on the 10:15 a.m. one, we're going to get pulled over to this alerts area. Might be the first time you've seen the alerts page. Think of this almost as your B2W inform inbox. This is going to keep track of important things happening to forms that are directly related to you. So no 2 alert pages will look the same. This is specific to the user we're logged in as. Additionally, this is the only tab that is not security enabled. Every single user will have access to this alert page. So the alert that comes through, form was submitted, John submitted a form for review, and here's some details about that. So who submitted it, name of the form, and a link to go ahead to approve or reject that. I can click this link, and this will pull me right into that form that I need to approve. Additional ways that we can go ahead and keep track of what we need to approve or reject is on this pending tab. Right now, the default is for all forms here. This is a great drop-down list here that will go ahead and help make everybody's work easier. So the 2 options I have here are my pending forms. So these are forms from which Bob has submitted that has not been approved or rejected yet. So forms that this person is waiting on. And then the other one is forms pending my review. So these are forms that are currently in my queue that I need to do something to, that I have some action item on here. So an easy way to find it, anything that's in your queue is to just come in once again, hit that pending tab and switch from all down to forms pending my review. And then I'm going to click on this and it will pull me right into my form. At this point, as a form approver, the first thing I always do is select this history button. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One, I like to see when it was submitted. The other thing is, I mentioned there can be multiple approvers on a form. You might not be the first person to see this form, in which case we're going to see links to other sign-offs, other notes. Actually, let me see if I can go ahead and find an example of that for you. So in this case, we can see additional approvers and additional notes with this red text here. So back over to ours, we'll notice 2 big buttons. So once I check the history, review the form. Let's say something was wrong. I'm going to hit this reject button. We're going to get a pop-up here, comment, and let's say, need more details, please. Can type in my comments here, can sign below. And at that point, I'd hit reject form here. What that will go ahead and look like is the following. So if I have a rejected form, I can come to the rejected page, pull that up. We'll see the reason that my form was rejected, the comments, I can hit OK, hit my edit button, fix my comments, and then resubmit that. The goal of the workflow is not to have forms sit in the rejected column. We want to see as many forms as possible in this approved and for non-workflow in the completed. Pending and rejected are just temporary states. So when you reject a form, the result is the user is going to go back in there, fix what was wrong, and then resubmit. They don't have to go in and start a new form over again. To go ahead and approve a given form, so we'd hit this approve button. So we can say the same thing. So maybe looks great. But maybe we want someone else to take a second look at this. And then I'm going to sign below. So always looking for our signature here. And I can add a user. So even to back up a step, say I thought this was fine, I could just say, looks great, approve form. That would be the end of the line. This form would be in that final state. But let's say we did want to add another approver here. So down at the bottom here, approver 2, I can come down, add another user. If I hit approve form here at this point, Eliza is now going to receive the same things as the account I just was logged in at. So they're going to receive an email notification that they've been submitted a form for review. And within their own Inform environment, they're going to go ahead and have a notification button in the top right there. So let's just hit approve form. We'll keep this simple here. We'll now notice over in the approved area, we will see this particular form. Actually, because I sent it from the other account, I'm actually going to switch over back to that original form, that original account I signed in as. So we'll go to forms here. Right off the bat, we're going to notice notification to my form. We'll see over in alerts, my form was approved. We'll see the comments in here. I can click this link, will pull me right into that form. At this point, I can hit my history button and see everything that happened. Open up my hide comments and signature, and we'll see the comments here and my signature here. So on the home page, again, we'll go to forms and we'll see under approved this top one here. So 6/18/2020, and we're in that approved file here. So again, this is a great feature for obtaining signatures for people who are geographically dispersed, or if using that history is very important to you. Don't feel you do need to use this if it's not a perfect fit. It's just an additional tool within Inform for you. And definitely take a look at if people are working close together, if you need to use their workflow, or if it's easier for them just to go ahead and walk over, grab a signature on that iPad, iPhone, save some email traffic. Don't turn this on just to receive notifications that a form has been filled out. That's what we're going to jump into next under the alerting area. We really want to keep the workflow for the process that was outlined here. You do need to just be notified anytime that something was filled out. We have other ways of, and better ways of obtaining that end result. Because what we don't like to see, again, don't like to see a year from now, 100, 200, 300 pending forms sitting here. That's a good indication that workflow maybe doesn't need to be turned on. We want to see the bulk of those over in this approved column here. Before we jump over into the alerts page, so we talked about this briefly, and making custom alerts for notification purposes. What we're looking at here is the alerts tab, and specifically the first tab within here, my notifications. So as we just look at any time that something happens for a form that is going through the workflow process that a user is involved with, they're going to receive notifications for that. So that's the first of one of two types of notifications we'll see here. So we'll see things like form submitted, form approved, form rejected, anything related to that workflow process. These are all going to follow a very similar format. To open any of these, simply just click on this and we'll get more details here. So we'll always see any comments that were added and a link to the form. The other type of notifications we're going to see on this is going to be from our custom alerts, which we're going to build out in just a moment here. And those are going to come through like the following. So it's going to say alert type, simply alert, the name of the alert. So that's going to be determined on the alert page. And then we'll see the details about that. So alert name, the form that triggered it, who the form owner was that submitted it, and then the notes here. And you can also, again, click on that hyperlink to go into that form specifically. Anything at this point, there aren't any because I don't have any new notifications. If there were, then there'd be a red icon here indicating an unread message. Once you select them, they will be cleared. Additionally, this is going to start to just naturally group our alerts together by date. So it could say today, yesterday, this week, last month, and then anything older will just be listed as older. There is an additional page to this. It is our hidden page. So think of this as an alert archive. And rather than deleting any alerts, we'll just send them over to this hidden page here. So to do so, again, top right here, I'm going to hit show active. And let's say I wanted to hide a few of these older ones. I'm going to come through and just select them on the right. If I wanted to select all of them, at the top, there is this select all feature that will select everything. And once I select them, I can hit this hide selected. If they weren't read yet, I could mark selected as read. So similar to working within an email inbox. And I'm going to hide those. We'll see my count go down to 10. It was at 12. And now if I go over to the show hidden page, we'll see that count go up. And those are placed in here within chronological order. All right, next we're going to take a look at building our custom alert. So what this feature will allow you to do is to create an if-then statement, which will go ahead and trigger a notification based off some information within a form that was filled out. So this isn't, sometimes people think it's more of a dispatching feature, sending it out for forms to be filled out. This is event-driven alert. So something has to happen. So a form has to be filled out or certain answers must be selected. And when the criteria is met, which we're going to specify within creating a new alert here, then it's going to send it out to a predetermined list of individuals, both internal and external, to, as the name suggests, alert them of this situation. Some examples of these are on this page here. So the most simple one is one I kind of alluded to at the end of the workflow, is we can set up an alert to be triggered anytime a certain form is filled out. So we could set up a criteria for that. What this is used mostly for is for specific events. So something such as a site received a failing inspection score, safety concerns reported, equipment defects have been reported, things that require additional attention. And we can even set these up to very specific instances. So down to certain jobs, pieces of equipment, whatever that might be. A couple of different approaches I've seen to alerting. Some clients like to go ahead and have some more broad alerts covering a lot of different potential instances. Others get really granular and they'll have upwards of 70, 80, 90 alerts to account for very specific situations, or maybe even slight differences in those that is going to determine a different user group to notify. So we can keep it high level and we can get very granular with these as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at creating a new alert. I'm going to hit create new at the bottom here. And actually, even just to back up one step, if you don't see this tab, even though this alert tab on the left, this big bright red one, is not security enabled, the tab within here is. So under setup, there is a create alert permission. So you'll need that to access this part, this tab of the software here. So we'll go to create new alert. And this is split into 4 different steps. So step 1, entering the alert name. Step 2, configuring what's going to trigger this alert. Step 3, adding who's going to receive it. And then step 4, entering in additional notification text for emails and in-app notifications. Other buttons on this page at the very bottom include a PDF for email notifications. So in certain instances, a user may not regularly have permissions to view a form from which an alert is triggered. In those cases, this can be very useful to turn on. They'll get that PDF of the form. The other will be for if we enable external recipients. So if someone doesn't even have an Inform license and we want them to be able to see the form that triggered this alert, definitely go ahead and select this box here. a preview of what these will look like. We can click here. So left-hand side, this is a preview of the email that will be sent out. Right-hand side is a preview of the text message that will be delivered. There are 3 ways in which these notifications are delivered. So as we just saw, email, text messages, and what we talked about on the last page was these in-app notifications here. Step 1, the name. So this will be the subject line of the email as well as the full message within the text message. This is limited to 70 characters, and it'll let you know when you hit that threshold here. I'm going to skip this step for now. I actually come back to it, and I name my alert once I'm finished building it out. So the first step we're going to jump into is actually step 2 here, is configuring this alert. So I'm going to hit this drop down, and we're going to see a list of templates within the system. And I'm going to come down to that same incident investigation form. Once I select a template, we'll see the criteria window open up down below. As a note, you can create as many alerts from any template as you need to. So I could set up an alert here, hit save, start create new again, select the same template. So you can set up as many as you need to for any of the templates. So down below here, this is where we're going to set up these if-then statements here. So we're going to say, we're going to take a look at our question. So what we're seeing here is actually a list of our component unique names. And we talked about that in our template building webinar, where every component actually has 2 names, both the name visible to the user filling it out, and then the name that's going to be used by the system, both in alerting and reporting. So we'll see those here. So that's why it's really important to rename these. If I did not rename these, I'd see a lot of things such as checkbox 1, checkbox 2, checkbox 3. And from this screen, that's very out of context. So I'm not quite sure what would line up where. So nothing would break, but just going to make life a little easier if you get in the habit of renaming those to something along these lines. So description of incident, involved employee, and even a numbering system as well. The other additional fields we're going to see in here that are not components you would have added are the metadata fields. And we took a look at these when we were using our auto-populate component. So as a background, again, metadata is always collected when a user fills out a form, and it's done so behind the scenes. It's pretty high level system information type of data. So completed on, submitted on dates, the group, subgroup, who were logged in as when we filled this out, all the things along those lines. So let's go ahead and we're going to grab a couple of key questions in here. So I'm going to look for incident type. So I'm going to grab that, and we'll see our operator here. So equals, does not equals, contains, and that same answer list that was provided within that template. I'm going to add another rule quickly just to show you a difference in operators here. The operator we're able to select here, people often ask, how can I see differences between them? This is specific to the type of data that was collected. So just from experience in working in this without even looking at this, I would know that this is a multiple choice question. So I have equals, does not equals, and this contains. If I had a simple yes, no, so say a radio button or a drop-down list set up to just single choice, my operators would be simpler. Something like a date, a lot more possibilities here. So we're seeing a lot more operators. So specifically these greater than and less than functions here. To delete anything you put in there you didn't mean to, just hit that delete button. So what I'm going to do is set something up for injury. So if the incident type contains injury, then go ahead and trigger this alert. This could be as simple as this here. So in this case, I'm using contains and not equals, because for a multi-choice, if I use equals, it's going to look for an exact match. So if I put just injury and someone selected injury and equipment, when they went and filled this out, this would not match up. So to cover all my bases, I like to hit contains here. And we'll just work through this simple example, and then we'll circle back. We can add as many rules as we need to. But say it was just going to be something like this. Next step I'm going to do is come to users, and I'm going to add who is going to receive this alert. So this is a list of Inform users here. Select them, hit add. Down below, I can add by user group. So maybe I want the foreman on this one as well. Hit add. And then below this, anyone who's not part of Inform, I can add both emails and phone numbers. And I'll hit that add button. Email will come through. And then if I wanted to send a text message to someone, I can go ahead and do that as well. And we'll hit add. And now let's take a look over in this matrix we created. So grouped by how we added them. So users, user groups, external. List of contact information for this individual. This is what's stored within Inform. Right side, we have our columns. So the first, each column is representative of how this notification will be delivered. So at the top here is a computer screen. This is for an in-app notification. Anyone who's part of Inform, so user or user group, will receive this. And if I hover over it, there's a little X icon. I cannot turn this off. And on the flip side, for someone who's external, I cannot turn this on. So some of these are going to default to their appropriate responses here. So other examples of that are if someone just puts in their email address, I can't go ahead and opt them into text messages, and same it for phone numbers. If I put in a text message, I can't opt into email or these in-app notifications. These other columns are optional. So if I select at the top, it'll add them to all that apply, or I can sort of pick and choose here. Same with the text message here. If I need to take anyone off an alert, we can go ahead and just select the appropriate people, hit remove, and that will take them out. Bottom, this will be both for the in-app and the email notification text. You could say something like, hey, at the top now, I might go ahead and rename this. So injury reported. Could even just keep it as simple as that. Hit save. And we'll see my alert at the bottom here. So we see the name of the alert, who created it, the date it was created, the last time it was edited, what template this is based off of, if it's active or not. So this is a good column. Say you're still working on this alert and you're not ready for this to be triggered yet, simply just turn it off. So we can just uncheck that, and that'll deactivate the alert here. So you can continue to work without having anything get triggered when you're not intending to. These other buttons, so I can edit, will bring me right back in. Delete will take it out of the system. And then copy is a great feature. This will open up that alert as a new one with everything filled out. So maybe I wanted to set up a lot of alerts that were similar in nature, but maybe had different distribution groups or maybe slightly different triggers within here. Hit that copy button and this will be a great time saver. Questions before I'm going to jump into some more advanced examples within building out some of these criteria here, but just on a high level, any questions on setting up these alerts? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at adding some additional rules. So maybe beyond the incident type containing injuries, I want to go ahead and take a look at the nature of the injury. So I'm going to grab nature of injury, and I can tell once again, This one is simply a single choice. I only have equals, does not equals. I don't have that contains. And maybe we only want something that is very specific to this. Maybe concussion. We'll just use this as an example. In this case, we'll take a look at the top left. We have this and or. Both of these, how this is set up, because we have this and, so we're going to read through these in order. There's a little tree on the left-hand side here. So as this reads, incident type must contain injury as one of the selections. And then we'll go to the next one, nature of injury must equal concussion. So both of these two answers have got to be selected for the alert to be triggered and to be sent out to the following people. In this case, if just one were triggered, would not trigger this alert. If we wanted it to be an either or situation, we can do that right here, and we could switch this to or. So maybe incident type contains injury, or someone marked this as concussion. So as long as one of these criteria is met, then this alert will be triggered. Let's say I wanted to have multiple instances of an or in there. I can add groupings of rules. So notice this gets indented underneath here. Let's say we wanted this to be for a specific, let me see if I have job site here. So I'm going to do, just scrolling through my options here. All right. So we're going to do equals, and we're going to pick a couple of the jobs. Maybe I'm setting this rule up for myself, and I only want this to be for the jobs that I manage. I'm going to add those three in there. I'm going to come back up here and put and. How this reads now is kind of the best of both worlds of that previous example. So first, we're saying incident type must contain injury, and I'm going to put this to or. This is an or statement in here. So just one of these has to be right to trigger this. So I'm saying from the top again, incident type contains injury, and one of these jobs must be selected, because this is an or nested in here. So it either has to be the Elm Street job, General Sullivan, or the highway job. At this point, I would go ahead and rename some. So injury reported, and I would say at Elm Bridge or. So you'll notice I'll keep it pretty short and to the point in the top here, because I am limited to 70 characters here. And this will just be for the subject line and the text message. Down below here, maybe in this case, I'm going to pull out these other individuals, and I'm just going to keep this. And this is Eliza's job, so this is just going to her. And maybe I'm going to set these up for a lot of my users here. So I'm going to say the attached form screen alert for an injury on one of your active jobs. Attached and call safety department, and even put in a number here. And I did save here. If I open this back up, I'm going to navigate us back to that help file again here. So hitting that help within creating new alerts. I know that last example is a little more complicated than some of the ones that you might even get into, but if you do have questions on this, creating new alerts, there's a great section in the help here. So overview on the steps. And if we scroll down here, there's 3 examples in here for going through exactly what we just did. So this is a great area to reference within here. The last example I will walk us through is creating a very simple alert. So I mentioned not to use workflow just to be notified when a form gets filled out. Let's say I wanted to know anytime a leave request was filled out. I'll show you a good trick to use for this particular use case here. This leave request submitted. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find completed on, submitted on. So this is a metadata field, which is what I'm going to want to use to trigger this, because behind the scenes, the users have no control over this. So I know this is always going to be filled out by the system. And all I'm going to do is kind of a little trick here. I'm going to pick the greater than operator, and I'm going to pick a date in the past. So if I wanted this for going forward, I would just pick, say, yesterday. As this reads here, for the template, employee leave request, completed on, submitted on date, greater than, and this is 6/17, today's the 18th. This is always going to evaluate to true. So anytime someone completes this, submits this, this will trigger this alert, which will send out an email, as we just looked at, saying following has been filled out. So you could go ahead and put on the list here whoever was going to deal with those. So this can be a good strategy for just staying in the know. I will say this as a little bit of a caution. Sometimes people take this and they really run with it. Make sure if you do this, that it really is for important forms or for lower frequency forms, because you will get an email for every one of these. And sometimes I do see people turning these off as soon as a week later, 2 weeks later, getting overwhelmed with some emails. We will talk in the future webinars about setting up a scheduled report if we just wanted to look at some higher level recaps of what was submitted for a day or a week, something along those lines. But this can be a great option for just finding out if something was submitted or not. Another trick I will show everyone is, well, actually we'll stay on this page here. I'm gonna swap out this example here. And we're gonna go to an equipment inspection. And it really could be for any type of inspection. Let's say I wanted to keep track of when something was marked as damaged on a piece of equipment. And before we look at building this, I'll show you an example of a template. So we'll go to fill out form. And we're going to pull up this inspection daily. And we're going to work in tandem on these two here. So I'm going to grab that one as well. Equipment inspection daily. Let's say I wanted to determine anytime something was marked as damaged here. So there's only about 10 questions here. I could come in here, find each one of these and say break operation equals damaged. And I could set this up, add rule, this case maybe using an or statement, or EMS gauges equal damaged, add rules, number 3, damaged. I will say for a form of this size, this might be doable to account for each one of these situations. Say this was a multi-page inspection though. From an admin side, this is going to start to get kind of hard to manage, especially if you want to make changes going forward. So a good trick that sometimes we will implement and we can recommend doing is to add a simple question at the end of the form. And sometimes it may seem silly to the workers filling this out, but adding a question that could say, was anything marked as damaged? And they might say, well, I know I asked one, but what this can do is eliminate a lot of complicated statements here. And I can add in a question like this, or maybe even something that requires immediate attention. Yes or no. Do I need to trigger an alert for this? Is it really damaged, or does this really need to come in now? And triggering an alert based off that one particular question. So right here. So machine requires immediate attention equals yes. Much more streamlined, much more easy to manage from the admin side here. Adding in just some simple catch questions like this. Could even be by section. You had a larger site inspection. Anything in housekeeping that requires immediate attention, yes or no. Anything on the scaffolding requires immediate attention. Anything at all here. And just making work a little easier for you guys on the alerting side here. One last time, if you have questions on anything we went through again, under the forms, we have the approve, reject process here. So everything we went through regarding that. There are some workflow examples in here as well, 4 different scenarios actually. So scenario 1, 2, 3, these will open up in their own pages with some videos as well. And then alerts and notifications. This has its entire own section here. So just general about alerts, about notifications, and then specifically how to create and edit any of the alerts within the system here. All right, that will conclude our webinar today. Thanks for taking the time to join us.